The desert stretched far under twin suns, each one casting long shadows over the broken land. Heat waves shimmered, and the air carried the taste of dust. A human walked across the wasteland, his boots sinking into the cracked earth. His name was Jareen, a soldier who no longer served an army. He had once fought wars on strange worlds, but now he only wanted peace. Yet peace rarely lasted long in the galaxy. His path had changed the moment he found the child. The child was not human. Small, with glowing amber eyes and skin patterned with faint scales, the alien child had been hiding in the ruins of an old outpost. When Jareen first saw him, the boy looked frightened but proud, clutching a small stone carved with strange symbols. The human knelt down, offering water and food. To his surprise, the child accepted, but never spoke a word. For 2 days, the boy followed him silently. Jareen thought perhaps the child was lost, separated from his people. Against his better judgment, he decided to return the boy to wherever he belonged. It felt like the right thing to do. The journey led them into the heart of a canyon, where red cliffs rose like walls of a forgotten fortress. Jareen felt eyes on him long before he saw the first warriors. Figures emerged from the shadows, tall, armored, and carrying spears tipped with jagged metal. Their armor was carved with tribal markings, their faces hidden under helmets shaped like beasts. The boy walked with more confidence now, his glowing eyes bright. Jareen realized with unease that he had not been leading the child at all. The child had been leading him. The warriors blocked his way. Jareen rested a hand on the hilt of his plasma blade, though he kept it lowered. The child stepped forward, raising the carved stone. The warriors murmured, their voices echoing like thunder in the canyon. Jareen could not understand their language, but he knew he had walked into something larger than himself. The warriors parted, creating a path. Unsure, Jareen followed the child deeper into the canyon. The air grew cooler, the shadows darker, until they reached a wide-open chamber surrounded by towering stone pillars. At its center burned a massive fire, and around it sat more warriors, an entire village hidden within the rocks. Their eyes all turned toward the human. The child finally spoke, his voice clear and sharp. Jareen did not know the words, but the sound carried authority. The people reacted with awe. Some bowed, others raised their spears in salute. Jareen stood still, realizing the boy was no ordinary child. The carved stone must have meant something sacred. He felt as though he had returned not just a lost child, but a prince, or perhaps something even greater. An elder stepped forward, her armor decorated with bones and shining beads. She studied Jareen with piercing eyes that seemed to weigh his soul. The boy handed her the carved stone, then pointed at the human. Gasps filled the chamber. The elder raised her staff, striking it once against the stone floor. The warriors echoed the sound by striking their spears. Dust rained from the canyon walls. Jareen's chest tightened. He could feel the pressure of their judgment. He whispered under his breath, "I just wanted to bring him home." But he understood now he had walked straight into a test. The elder spoke, and though the words were foreign, Jareen felt their meaning. The child had not been lost. The journey had been deliberate. Jareen had been chosen to face a trial, one that would decide the future of this people. 1,000 eyes watched him in silence. The firelight painted their armor in shades of gold and blood. The boy stood beside him, unafraid, his small hand gripping Jareen's arm, as if declaring to all that the human was his protector. The weight of it sank in. He had thought himself a wanderer with no purpose, but these people saw him as something else. He looked at the boy, then at the warriors circling around. The desert was quiet, waiting. Somewhere inside, Jareen felt the old part of himself stir, the soldier who had once led men in hopeless battles, who had carried the wounded on his back through fire and steel. He thought that part of him had died long ago. Yet now, standing in this hidden alien village, he felt it breathing again. The elder struck her staff once more, and the ground seemed to tremble. A circle was forming. Warriors stepped back, clearing space around Jaren. His trial was about to begin. He did not yet know the rules, the task, or the danger. But one truth echoed in his heart. This was not about the child anymore. This was about him. The fire roared higher, casting sparks into the air. The boy's glowing eyes never left his. Jaren took a deep breath and stepped forward. Whatever test they had prepared, he would face it. He had returned the child. Now the question was, what would they make of him? The circle of warriors tightened as Jaren stood in the firelit chamber. Dust swirled around their armored feet, and the sound of spears striking the ground echoed like drums of war. The elder raised her staff once more, then pointed at him. No words were spoken, but the meaning was clear. He had to prove himself. Jaren's hand hovered near his plasma blade, but he hesitated. He was a fighter, yes, but this did not feel like a simple duel. It felt like something sacred, something that could not be solved with only violence. The child remained beside him, glowing eyes filled with trust. Jaren wondered if the boy understood more than he let on. Two warriors stepped into the circle. Their armor was heavier, decorated with jagged bones, their spears gleaming under the flames. They circled Jaren like predators, testing his reaction. He kept still, watching them with calm eyes. The villagers whispered among themselves, waiting for the human to act. When the first warrior lunged, Jaren's body moved before thought. His blade snapped to life, glowing blue, intercepting the spear with a crack of energy. Sparks flew, and the crowd roared. The second warrior attacked from behind, but Jaren twisted, his cloak snapping as he blocked again. He didn't strike to kill, only to defend. His movements were precise, trained from years of battles he thought he had left behind. The clash went on until both warriors stepped back. They bowed their heads, acknowledging his strength. Jaren lowered his blade, breathing heavily but controlled. The villagers cheered, though not all. Some studied him with narrowed eyes, as if waiting for him to fail. The elder raised her staff again, and another test began. This time, no warriors stepped forward. Instead, a heavy stone door at the far side of the chamber rumbled open. From the shadows emerged a beast unlike anything Jaren had seen. It was massive, with a body of muscle and scales, glowing eyes like molten fire, and tusks curling from its jaws. Chains hung from its neck, snapping as it pulled free. The crowd grew silent. Jaren felt the ground shake as the creature approached, its breath hot and heavy. The child let go of his arm and walked to the center of the circle. Jaren's heart froze. "No," he muttered, stepping forward. But the boy raised a hand as if to calm him. The beast lowered its head, sniffing the child, then turned its eyes toward Jaren. The challenge was clear. He had to face the creature. He could kill it and show his power, or he could find another way. Jaren's instincts screamed to fight, but he saw something in the beast's eyes. Pain. Its tusks were scarred, its scales torn. It was not a monster by nature, it was a prisoner. Perhaps this was the true test, not of strength, but of mercy. He deactivated his blade and let it fall to his side. The crowd gasped. The warriors muttered angrily. Some raised their spears, demanding blood. But Jaren ignored them. He stepped closer, slow and steady. The beast growled, claws scraping the ground, but he did not stop. "You're not my enemy," Jaren whispered. His voice was calm, the same tone he once used to soothe terrified soldiers. He removed his glove and extended his hand. The beast growled louder, but the child's glowing eyes met Jaren's, urging him forward. The chamber held its breath. The beast's hot breath washed over Jaren's face as it leaned closer, teeth bared. Then, slowly, it pressed its massive head against his hand. The roar of the crowd turned into chaos. Some shouted in awe, others in anger. But no one could deny what they had seen. The elder struck her staff hard against the stone floor, silencing the noise. Her eyes locked on Jaren, and for the first time, she smiled. The chains around the beast fell away, and it lowered itself at Jaren's feet. Bowing like a loyal guardian, the child returned to his side, gripping his hand tightly. The message was clear to all. The human had not only faced their trials, he had earned the loyalty of a creature. Their own warriors feared Dot as the fire burned higher. The elders spoke words Jaren still could not understand, but their weight pressed on him. He was no longer a stranger. He was a candidate, a possible leader. The thought made his chest heavy. He had not asked for this. He had not wanted it. But the eyes of an entire people were on him now, waiting to see if he would rise or fall. That night, he was given a place near the fire. Food was set before him, and warriors sat around in silence, stealing glances at the human who had calmed the beast. The child sat close, never letting go of his arm. Jaren ate slowly, his mind racing. He wondered if he had made a mistake by not killing the creature. Yet deep down, he knew the truth. If leadership meant anything, it had to be more than violence, but he also knew something darker. These trials were only beginning. And somewhere in the silence of the canyon, he could feel another power watching him. Not all wanted a human as their leader. The fire burned low as night deepened in the canyon. The alien village was alive with whispers. Some warriors bowed their heads when they passed Jaren, while others spat on the ground and turned away. The human had calmed the beast, but to many, that made him dangerous. They had seen strength before, but mercy was something they did not trust. Jaren sat close to the fire, the child beside him. The boy leaned against his arm, his glowing eyes fixed on the flames as though he carried no fear at all. Jaren watched the warriors across the circle. Some studied him like hunters studying prey. He could feel the weight of their judgment pressing down on him. The elder sat opposite, silent and unmoving. Her staff rested across her lap, her eyes closed as if she listened to something beyond the fire's crackle. Jaren wondered if she was waiting for him to speak, to ask why he was here, but he stayed silent. He did not want to show weakness by asking questions he might not understand. At last, the elder opened her eyes and spoke. The words were foreign, but she pointed to the child, then to Jaren, then to the fire. Her tone was heavy, ceremonial. The child answered in the same language, his small voice carrying across the chamber. The people listened as though he were already their chosen one. Jaren frowned. The boy spoke with certainty, with strength. This was not just a child. He was something more, perhaps the heir of this tribe, perhaps their sacred figure. Yet he had brought Jaren here, and every word he spoke seemed to tie the human closer to their fate. As dawn painted the cliffs with gold, a horn echoed through the canyon. The village stirred as warriors gathered, forming lines. Jaren rose, and the child took his hand, pulling him toward the gathering. The elder stood tall, her staff raised, speaking words that carried command. From the crowd, a new figure stepped forward. A tall warrior with jagged armor and scars across his face. His helmet was off, revealing hard eyes that burned with anger. He pointed at Jaren, his voice loud and sharp. The villagers shouted in response, some in agreement, others in protest. The elder struck her staff, silencing them, but the scarred warrior did not bow. He stepped into the circle and slammed his spear into the ground. The challenge was clear. He did not believe the human was worthy. Jaren tightened his jaw. He had no desire for their throne, no hunger for power. But he understood the danger. If he refused the challenge, he would appear weak. If he fought and lost, he would die. And if he fought and won, he would be drawn deeper into this test. The child looked up at him, his small hand gripping tighter. The boy's glowing eyes showed no fear. Jaren sighed, placing his hand on the hilt of his blade. He whispered, "I didn't ask for this," but he stepped forward all the same. The duel began. The scarred warrior moved fast, his spear thrusting with deadly precision. Jaren blocked, sparks flying as energy blade met metal. The clash rang out through the canyon, each strike echoing like thunder. The crowd roared, chanting in their harsh tongue. Jaren fought with skill, but he did not seek to kill. He dodged, deflected, countered, but his opponent pressed harder, driven by fury. At last, the warrior swung wide, aiming for Jaren's chest. Jaren stepped inside the arc, grabbing the spear's shaft. With a twist and a surge of strength, he wrenched it free and slammed the warrior to the ground. The crowd erupted in chaos. Some shouted in anger, others in shock. The scarred warrior lay stunned, staring up at the human who now held his weapon. Jaren raised the spear high, and for a moment he considered finishing it. But he stopped. With a sharp move, he broke the spear across his knee and threw the pieces aside. The elder's eyes widened. The people fell silent. Jaren had won, but once again, he had chosen not to kill. He turned and walked back to the child, his cloak dragging across the dust. The boy grasped his hand with pride. As if Jaren had done exactly what was expected, the scarred warrior rose slowly, his pride wounded deeper than his body. His eyes burned with hatred. He would not forget this humiliation. That night, the village was restless. The duel had shaken them. Some saw Jaren's mercy as wisdom, others as weakness. Around the fires, voices argued. Should a leader be ruthless? Should a leader spare? The tribe was divided, and Jaren could feel the tension like a storm building above the desert. He sat in silence, the child sleeping against his arm. The fire cracked softly, but his mind was loud. He had thought he was just returning a lost child. Now he was at the center of a struggle for leadership of an entire people. And though he did not want it, fate seemed to tighten its grip with each choice he made. Above them, the twin moons rose, pale and watchful. Jaren stared at them, knowing tomorrow would bring another trial. He wondered if he could survive not just the challenges, but the growing envy of those who saw him as an outsider stealing their destiny. The canyon was quiet, but Jaren could not sleep. The whispers of the tribe drifted through the night air like the hiss of snakes. Some voices carried praise, others carried anger. He had beaten their warrior without spilling blood, and to many that was strength. But to others, it was weakness. A leader who spared an enemy was no leader at all. The child lay asleep against his arm, small and peaceful. Jaren studied his face, the glowing amber eyes now closed, the strange markings across his skin faint under the moonlight. The boy had led him here, and the people treated him as something sacred. But why had the boy chosen him, a human, for this test? Before dawn, a hand shook his shoulder. It was one of the younger warriors, his armor less decorated than the others. He whispered urgently in broken words that Jaren could barely understand. Danger, you. Come. He motioned toward the shadows. Jaren rose quietly, careful not to wake the child. The warrior led him into a narrow passage between the cliffs. When they were far from the firelight, the young alien spoke more clearly. They plan. Kill you, tonight, scarred one. Not forgive. Elder stopped them, but not strong forever. Jaren nodded slowly. He had felt the hatred burning in the scarred warrior's eyes. Mercy had saved a life, but it had also created a new enemy. He asked, "Why warn me?" The young alien hesitated, then touched his chest. You, different. You fight strong. You fight. With heart. Maybe. You're right. Before Jaren could answer, a sound echoed from deeper in the canyon footsteps. Armor clinking, voices muttering. The young warrior's eyes widened. Too late. They come. Jaren's instincts sharpened. He pressed against the rock wall, scanning the shadows. Figures appeared, 4 warriors, armed with spears and blades. The scarred one led them, his face twisted with rage. He pointed at Jaren, his voice like a growl. Human dies tonight. The young warrior stepped in front of Jaren, raising his spear. But the scarred one laughed. "You defend, outsider? Then you die too." The clash was sudden. Spears struck, blades flashed. Jaren's plasma blade ignited with a hiss, its blue glow lighting the canyon walls. He fought with precision, blocking, striking, forcing his attackers back. The young warrior fought beside him, his movements less skilled but full of courage. One enemy fell, disarmed and stunned. Another pressed hard against Jaren, but the human twisted, slamming him into the rock with brutal strength. The scarred one came forward then, his eyes wild. He swung with deadly force, and Jaren blocked, sparks flying. The two circled each other, striking again and again, their fight echoing through the canyon like thunder. But Jaren was not alone. The young warrior struck one of the attackers from behind, knocking him down. Now only the scarred one remained, breathing hard, glaring at Jaren with hatred deeper than any wound. "End it," the young warrior urged. "Kill him, or he never stop." Jaren's blade hovered above the scarred warrior's throat. His heart pounded. He remembered the beast he had spared, the duel he had refused to finish. Every time he showed mercy, he gained both respect and enemies. But he could not kill a man in cold blood, not like this. He deactivated the blade and stepped back. The scarred warrior stared at him, stunned. Jaren spoke firmly. "I will not kill you. But if you come again, you will not walk away." The scarred one spat at the ground and fled into the darkness, his pride more broken than his body. The remaining warrior followed. The young alien looked at Jaren with disbelief. "You always spare." "Why?" Jaren sheathed his blade. "Because if I kill every enemy, I'll become like them. And then I'm no leader at all." They returned to the village before dawn. The elder was waiting, her staff planted firmly in the ground. She looked at Jaren, then at the young warrior, and understood without words. She raised her staff and struck at once. The tribe gathered, murmuring. The elder spoke, her voice sharp. Though Jaren did not understand the language, the meaning was clear. His trial was not finished. Mercy had carried him this far, but more awaited. The people looked at him with a mix of awe and doubt. Some bowed, some turned away. The child took his hand again, squeezing tightly. His glowing eyes looked into Jaren's with quiet certainty, as if saying, "You chose the right path." But Jaren felt the storm brewing. Mercy had saved his soul, but it had not saved him from enemies. And he knew, deep inside, that the next trial would not test his blade or his heart. It would test his very place among them. Above, the suns rose, painting the canyon in blood-red light. The village stirred, ready for another day. Jaren stood tall, but his chest was heavy. He had thought this was only about returning a child. Now he understood it was about leading a people who were not his own. And he feared the greatest trial was yet to come. The morning came heavy with tension. The villagers moved about, sharpening weapons, speaking in low voices. Jaren felt the weight of their stares more than ever. Some looked at him with hope, others with open hatred. The scarred warrior was gone, but his anger remained like smoke after fire. The elder summoned Jaren to the great fire. The child walked at his side, his small hand never leaving the humans. The elder struck her staff, and the crowd fell silent. She spoke in their tongue, her words sharp, and pointed toward the cliffs beyond the canyon. Jaren frowned. He did not understand the words, but he understood the gesture. Something was coming. A threat. And the tribe was preparing for war. The young warrior who had warned Jaren the night before stepped forward, speaking with urgency. He used a few words Jaren understood. "Raiders, many soon." He pointed to the horizon, where a dark haze drifted against the bright sky. Jaren's chest tightened. He had faced raiders before, bands of killers who swept across worlds, leaving nothing but fire and bones. If they came here, this hidden village was in danger. The canyon walls were strong, but the tribe was divided. If they could not stand together, they would fall. The elder raised her staff and pointed to Jaren. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Some nodded, some shouted in anger. The young warrior whispered to Jaren, "They test you again. Lead us, or we die." Jaren felt the ground shift beneath him. He had fought battles his whole life, but he had not expected to lead one here. Yet as he looked at the people, the fear in their eyes, the child clutching his hand, he knew there was no choice. He stepped forward and spoke, his voice steady. "If raiders are coming, then we fight smart. Not with chaos. We use the canyon, the cliffs, the fire." The words were foreign to most ears, but the young warrior translated quickly. Some nodded. Others shook their heads. The scarred warrior's followers shouted from the crowd, their voices sharp. They wanted him silenced, cast out. But the elder struck her staff again, silencing them. Her gaze fixed on Jaren. The trial was clear. He must lead them in the coming battle. By dusk, the haze on the horizon had grown into dust clouds. The raiders came like a swarm, their armored beasts charging, their banners black against the twin suns. The ground shook under their advance. The villagers gathered on the cliffs, bows and spears ready. Jaren stood at the front, the child beside him, the young warrior at his flank. "Wait," Jaren commanded. He held up his hand. "Do not waste arrows." The young warrior translated, and the villagers obeyed. The raiders drew closer, their war cries echoing through the canyon. When the first wave entered the narrow pass, Jaren shouted, "Now!" Firepots were thrown from above, shattering against rock, sending flames and smoke into the raiders' ranks. Beasts reared, warriors stumbled. The canyon became a trap. "Strike from the sides." Jaren's voice rang out. The villagers rained spears and arrows from the cliffs. Raiders fell, crushed against stone. The battle turned to chaos, but the tribe fought as one, their fear burned away by fire and blood. Jaren leapt down into the fight, plasma blade blazing blue in the smoke. He cut through raiders with precision, his cloak snapping behind him. The young warrior joined him, fierce and fast, his spear flashing. Together they carved a path through the enemy. The scarred warrior appeared then, roaring as he struck down a raider. His eyes met Jaren's in the heat of battle. For one breath, there was no hatred between them, only survival. They fought side by side, each strike keeping the tribe alive. The raiders pressed harder, their numbers endless. But the canyon fought for the tribe. Fire, stone, and spears turned the narrow pass into a slaughter. Jaren pushed forward, rallying warriors wherever they faltered. His voice carried over the roar of battle. "Stand together. Protect your home." The child watched from the cliffs, his glowing eyes bright, his small voice chanting words in his tongue. The villagers heard him and fought harder, as though his presence gave them strength. At last, as the sun fell and the sky burned red, the raiders broke. Their beasts turned, their banners fell, and they fled into the desert, leaving their dead behind. The canyon was quiet again, filled only with the sound of heavy breaths and the crackle of dying flames. The villagers gathered, their eyes wide as they looked at Jaren. He stood tall, his blade dimming, his body tired but unbroken. They saw not just a human, not just a stranger, but a leader who had brought them victory. The elder stepped forward, raising her staff high. The people bowed, their voices chanting. Some still doubted, but many more now believed. The child ran to Jaren and took his hand, lifting it high as if to show all the tribe that this was the one they had been waiting for. But Jaren's heart was heavy. He had won the battle, but he knew the greatest test was still to come. To fight enemies outside was easy. To face enemies within, those who hated him for who he was, that would decide everything. The battlefield was quiet at last. Smoke curled from broken spears and shattered shields, and the canyon floor was littered with the dead. The raiders had fled, their banners left trampled in the dust. The villagers stood together, breathing hard, their armor stained with blood and ash. For the first time, they looked at Jaren not only with suspicion, but with awe. The child moved through the crowd and stopped before Jaren, his glowing eyes fixed on him with pride. He raised Jaren's hand high, his small voice calling out in their tongue. The people responded with a chant, their voices rising like thunder in the canyon. The sound shook Jaren's chest. He knew what it meant. They were naming him. Claiming him, the elder stepped forward, her staff striking the stone floor 3 times. The noise silenced the chants. Her voice rang out, slow and deliberate, each word heavy with weight. She pointed at the child, then at Jaren, and finally lifted her staff toward the sky. The young warrior, his chest still rising from battle, translated in broken words. The trial is complete. The child choose you. The beast bow to you. The battle you lead, you are. Chief, the crowd roared again. Some shouted with joy, others with anger. Jaren's heart sank. He had not asked for this. He had only wanted to return a child to his people. Now he stood at the center of their destiny, but not all accepted. The scarred warrior pushed through the crowd, his face twisted with rage. He pointed his broken spear at Jaren. His voice was loud, his words sharp, filled with fury. He was not ready to bow. He demanded another fight, one final test. The crowd split in 2. Half cried out for peace, half for blood. The elder lowered her head, saying nothing. The choice was Jaren's. Jaren looked at the scarred warrior, then at the people, then down at the boy still holding his hand. He could end this with another duel, another fight. But he saw the truth now. The people did not need more blood. They needed something greater. He stepped forward and spoke, his voice strong. I am not here to steal your throne. I am not here to take your people from you. But I fought beside you. I bled beside you. I stood when others fled. If you wish to fight me again, then kill me now. But if you wish to live, if you wish for your children to see tomorrow, then stand together. Not under me, not under him, but together. The words, though translated clumsily by the young warrior, carried through the crowd like fire through dry grass. The people murmured, their eyes turning from Jaren to the scarred warrior. For a long breath, the scarred warrior's face twisted with hate. But slowly, he lowered his broken spear. His pride was shattered, but even he could not deny what had happened. The elder raised her staff one last time. Her eyes locked on Jaren, and she gave a nod of respect. Not a command, not a binding, only respect. She struck her staff against the stone, and the crowd bowed their heads. The test was done. The child stepped in front of Jaren, glowing eyes bright, and spoke words that carried far. The young warrior whispered the meaning. He say, you are chosen. Not because you want. Because you are needed. Jaren knelt, meeting the boy's eyes. If I must lead, I will. But I will lead your way, not mine. The boy smiled, and for the first time, Jaren felt the weight lift from his chest. He had not won a crown. He had earned trust. That night, the fires burned high, not with fear, but with celebration. Warriors sang, children laughed, and the canyon walls echoed with life. Jaren sat near the flames, the child at his side. The villagers gathering around him not as strangers, but as kin. He looked up at the twin moons, pale and watchful. He had thought he was only returning a lost child. But in truth, he had been walking into his own trial. He was no longer a soldier without a cause, no longer a wanderer in the desert. He was something more, an outsider who had become part of a people not his own. And as the firelight flickered across their faces, he realized the truth. Humanity was not measured by blood spilled, enemies slain. It was measured by the hands you held, the battles you shared, and the lives you chose to protect. For the first time in years, Jaren smiled. The desert still stretched wide and harsh, but he was no longer walking it alone.